Yes. So what we have in the last class. So I started with object oriented. So we have seen what is encapsulation, and I said about what is the syntax of a class. So writing a class is nothing but developing your own data type. So writing a class is developing your own data type. And class is a collection of variables and methods. So these methods are also called as functions or member functions. So variables define the properties of the object, and methods or functions define the behavior of object. So whatever variables you are writing inside the class, so the variables defined inside the class are two types. One is instance variables or object level variables. Second one is what? Class level variables. So variables define, so these are variables, right? These variables define the data held by the object, and methods will define the functionality of the object. Variables define the properties and methods will define the functionality. So first we'll see methods, and then first we'll see instance method, and then we'll talk about instance variables. Okay. So let us see this. So let us see first instance methods. So instance here, it refers to the object. So whenever you find the term instance, is related with the object. Instance method or object level method. Okay, this method is for operating the object. For example, suppose if you take list itself. So list is a predefined class. List is what here? Predefined class. List, if you take list itself, what is a list here? List is a predefined class. Okay. If you're talking about list, right? So you create object of a list. You create object of a list. It'll say list one equal to list. Okay, so what will happen? The list object is created. What will happen here? The list object is created. Okay. So when you do this, which object is created? List object is created. When you write something like this, list one equal to list. After creating a list object, so this is a list object is created. After creating a list object, how you add the data? How you add the data into this list? You try to use the methods of which class? List class. If you take this as a class, what is the name of the class? List. This is a predefined class, right? Inside this class, you have some methods like append. Inside this class, you have a method like insert. Inside this class, you have a method called what? Remove. Like this, you find some methods inside this list class. If you want to add anything into the list, you call which method? Append method. If you want to remove anything from the list, you call which method? Remove method. If you want to insert anything into the list, you are calling which method? Insert method. So if you want to add anything into the list, okay, you are calling the methods of list. What you're writing is list one dot. What you're writing here, list one dot. What you're saying here, append. List one dot append. What is list one? Object. What is list one here? Object. Append is what here? Method. List one is the object and append is what? Method. So append method is bind, means it is performing operation at which level? Object level. So append is which method? Object level method, or it is called as which method? Instance method. Append is called which method? Object level method, or it is called as which method? Instance method, because it is bind with what here? Object. It perform the operation on which one here? Object. So append is called as which method? Object level method. I cannot say list dot append. I cannot say list dot append. I cannot say list dot append. What is list? Class. List is what here? Class. List is not object, right? In this case, list is not object. It is what here? Class. Using append, will you add it to the class? No. To add the values, first you have to create the object. And then you have to do what? Adding. So this method required what? Object. This method required what? Object. And bind with what here? Object. This method required object and it is bind with what here? Object. So instance method or object level method. Okay. A method defined inside class. A method defined inside class with the first argument as what here? Self. You write so many types of methods in the class, but the method which is having the first argument as what? Self, is called instance method, is called instance method or object level method. Is called instance method or object level method. A method defined inside class with first argument as what? Self, is called instance method or object level method. So self is a default argument. Self is a default argument. Self is a default argument hold by instance method. Self is not a keyword. Okay, self is not a keyword because argument names are what? Identifiers. Okay, self is a variable name. Okay, self is self. Self is self. Is argument name or variable name. Self is argument name or variable name. Self means what? Itself. Selfie, you'll say no. Selfie, you take selfie. Yes, selfie means you take a photograph from you only. I mean, you capture the photograph rather than somebody else. Okay, self is hold address of current object. Self hold the address of current object. Self argument hold address of which object? Current object. Self argument hold address of current object, or self hold address of object to which method is bind. Okay. So instance method is called with what name? Object name. We cannot call this method. Without creating object. So this method is used to perform which operations? Object level. To perform which operation? Object level operations. Object level operations. Okay. So self self-hold address of object, self-hold address of object to which method is bind. Instance method is called with object name. We cannot call this method without creating object. This method is used to perform which operations? Object level operations. What is the syntax of writing? In the place of self, can you write any other name? Because it is argument name. Okay, it is only argument name. So in the place of self, we can write any argument name. But according to Python naming conventions, any method having the first argument as a self is called object level method, right? So it is written like this: definition method name. So what is the first argument here? Self, followed by other arguments, and inside this you include the statements. Okay, inside this you include the statements, either one statement or more than one statement. You include number of statements, so that can be either one statement or more than one statement. One statement or more than one statement. Okay. For example, okay, for example, there is a class. So what is the name of the class here? Some robo. Robo is a class. So why I'm developing a robo class? To create robos. So every robo is having some functions. Okay, robo what here? Walk. So robo walk. So this is which method? First argument is self, right? This is which method? Object level method. Any method having first argument as a self is called object level method. So print robo walk. Okay, robo walk. Then robo is having one more operation called talk. Now this is also which method? Object level method. Same thing, you call it as instance method. So robo walk, robo what here? Talk. So how many operations are there here? Two operations. One is walk, the other one is what? Talk. Two methods are there. How many methods are there here? Two methods. One is walk, the other one is what here? Talk. Okay, so two methods are there. Okay, one is talk and one more is what here? Walk. Okay, now robo is a class. What is robo here? Class name. It is a class name or it is a data type name. What is the name of my data type here? Robo. Can I say robo dot? Can I say robo dot walk? Okay, can I say robo dot walk? No, because robo is a class and class is a blueprint. Class is what here? Blueprint. Class is only a blueprint. Okay, class is only blueprint. Can I say robo dot? Dot is called member access. From robo class, you are accessing which member? Walk. You're saying robo walk. You're saying robo walk. Okay. But walk is which method here? Object level. But you call this walk with method with which name? Class name. But is it object level method bind with the class name? No. Object level method required what? Object. Is it robo is created? No. Robo is designed. Robo is what here? Designed. But robo object is created? No. Robo object is not created. Robo is designed. But robo object is not created. Robo object is not created. Robo is designed. That's all. Robo is designed, but object is not created. Okay, object is not created. So once you run this, it is gives an error. Robo.walk missing one required positional argument self. What self required? Self required here. Self required self means walk required which one here? Object. But is it robo is the object or robo is the class? Class. But it should bind with what here? Object. So for that you create an object by saying robo1. Robo1 equal to what is the name of the class? Robo. Now this is creating. This is what here? Creating object of which class? Robo class. This is creating object of which class? Robo class. Okay, creating object of which class? Robo class. The way how you create the object of list class. List 1 equal to list. Now this is creating object of which class? List class. Creating object of which class here? List class. But this is creating object of which class here? Robo class. Robo is a user defined or predefined? User defined. List is a predefined or user defined? Predefined. So if you want the robo 1 should walk, then you'll say robo 1 dot walk. So walk method is called. It will call the walk method of which one? Robo. But this walk method hold the address of self. Walk is bind with which object here? Robo 1. So self is holding the address of which object? Robo 1. What self is holding the address of which object? Robo 1. So which one walk here? Which one walk here? Robo 1. Because self is holding the address of which object? Robo 1. Dot walk. So self hold the address of robo 1 and which one is walk here? Robo 1 walk. So what is the message you get here? Robo walk. In the same way, if I'm saying robo 1 dot, okay, talk. Robo 1 dot talk. Then which method is called here? Talk method. And talk method hold the address of which object? Robo 1. Self is holding address of which object here? Robo 1. Means which one will talk here? Robo 1. In the same way, if I'm writing list 1 dot, if I'm saying list 1 dot append 10, so this 10 will be added to which object? List 1. Means append is bind with which object here? List 1. So append method hold the address of which object here? List 1. Here walk method hold the address of which object? Robo 1, like that. Okay, yes, like list 1 dot append. In the same way, robo 1 dot walk. Okay, so object level method bind with the object. Now robo walk, robo what here? Talk. So using one class, you can create any number of objects. I created another object where I'm saying robo 2 dot walk and robo 2 dot, what is that here? Talk. Now this will create this calls. Now if I say robo 2 dot walk, now this time walk method is called on which object? Robo 2. This time self is holding the address of which object? Robo 2. And if I'm saying robo 2 dot talk, now this time self is holding Address of which object? Robo2. So robo2 dot walk and robo2 dot what is that? Talk. So robo walk and one more is robo talk. Okay. Yes. If you run this, now you can say robo walk, robo talk. This is first object, and robo walk and robo talk. This is a second object. Okay. Yes. So it is bind with. It is bind with what name? Object name. But if I'm calling this, object level methods are not called with what name? Class name. If I'm saying robo dot talk, robo is not object here. Immediately it gives what? Error. Missing one required positional argument called which one? Self. Okay. So this gives what here? Error. If you want to call this method with the class name, you have to say robo dot talk. You have to define which object to be talk, which robo should be talked. Then I'll say robo1. Now you can call like this. If you want, you can call like this. Okay, robo talk. So which robo will talk here? Robo1. But this is somewhat complex, right? Robo dot talk robo1. Rather than saying this, you can simply say robo1 dot talk. In the place of this robo dot talk, which one you want to talk? Robo1. So what is the self now? Robo1. Then robo1 will talk like that. Okay. Yes. Now this is valid again. This is valid. But most of the times you call object level methods. Okay, object level method bind with what name? Object name. Object level method is bind with what name? Object name. Yeah, you can create any number of classes, any number of objects in one program. Yes, you can write it. No problem. Okay, any number of classes you can write it. Any number of objects you can write it. Okay, in one class, one program, you can write any number of things. No problem. So using one class, you can create any number of objects. Okay. So once you run this, now this is output. Robo walk and robo talk. Robo walk and one more is what? Robo talk. Robo walk, robo talk, and robo walk and robo talk. Right? So here, the first argument is what here? Self. Now you are not sending anything to the self. So self is a default argument and which hold the address of current object. Self is a default argument which holds the address of current object, right? Now I can write with another argument. Okay, I write with another argument. Okay, saying that, for example, so there is a class. There is a class called, simple example I'm taking again. There is a class called which one? Calculator. Now calculator is having the operations like add. So add is a which method? Object level method. And it receive how many values here? Two values. So this is having total how many arguments? Three arguments. The first argument is a self. Second argument is A. Third argument is what? B. But are you sending anything to the self? No. Because self is what here? Default. And that holds the address of which object? Current object. That hold the address of which object here? Current object. So here I'm saying C equal to A plus B and written what here? C. Or again directly write. Again directly write written A plus B. So there is a method called sub which will receive A and B values and then return. Okay, return A minus B. Okay, and there is a multiply which receive A and B values and return what? A into B. And there is a division A comma B and then return A divided by B. Now, if you take this calculator is a class name, calculator is what here? Class name or which name here? Data type name. Okay, yes. Now, calculator is a class. And if you want to do some calculations, I cannot say calculator dot add. Okay, using calculator, I have to create number of calculators, which are nothing but objects. Okay, so until unless you don't create calculator, you cannot add it. Until unless you don't create a list, you cannot append it. Okay, until unless you don't create a list, you cannot append it. In the same way, until unless you don't create calculator object, you cannot add, you cannot subtract, you cannot multiply, you cannot divide. So you have to create the object. Now you are creating the object saying calculator 1 equal to calculator. Calculator 1 equal to calculator. Okay. So this is creating what here? Object. Creating object of which one here? Calculator. Creating object of which one here? Calculator. So after creating object, now I can perform the operations saying that calc1 dot add. Calc1 dot add 10 comma what is that? 20. So it's nothing but you are calling add method of calculator by sending a value. A value is what here? 10. B value is what here? 20. And self is what here? Calc1. So this is calc1 object. If you take this is which object here? Calc1 object. And assume that address of this object is some. Address of this object is some 1000. When you write here calc1 dot add 10 comma 20. Now 10 is received by A and 20 is received by what? B. And self hold the address of which one? Calc1. Self is holding the address of which one here? Calc1. Suppose if I am writing calc2, if I am writing calc2 equal to calculator, calc2 equal to calculator, so what will happen? So one more calculator is created. So one more calculator is created. So what is this here? Calc2. And assume that address of this calc2 is some 2000. If I'm saying calc2 dot result equal to calc2 dot, I said add 100 comma 200. So which method is called here? Add is called by sending A value is 100 and B value is what? 200. Now this time Add is holding the address of which object? Calculator 2. Now who's adding this? Who's adding these two values? Calculator 2. When I say calculator 1 dot add, who's adding these two values? Calculator 1. If I say calculator 2 dot add, who's adding these two values? Calculator 2. Because add is holding the address of which object? Calculator 2. So what is the self holding the address of which object? Current object. Self is holding the address of which object? Current object. Is holding the address of the current object. Okay. Yes. Now result 2 equal to calc 1 dot add. So we can invoke one method either one time or more than one time. No problem. So 10 comma 5. Result 3 equal to calc 1 dot multiply some 5 comma 6. Result 4 equal to calculator 1 dot division. Calculator 1 dot division some 10 comma 2. So I try to print result 1, result 2, result 3, result 4. So I use a separator as a backslash n. Okay, now once you run this, you can see 30, you can see 35, 30 and then 5.0. Okay, yes. But in the place of self, can I write any other argument? Yes. For example, I am writing x. In the place of self, what I have written? X. Because argument is variable only. Argument is variable. Variable is a identifier. Is it identifiers are predefined or user defined? User defined. Identifiers are not predefined, right? Identifiers are what? User defined. So here X is an identifier, right? X is what here? Identifier. And this X will hold. What X hold here? Address. Okay, in the place of self, I write X. What will happen? Is it given any error? No. It's not given any error, right? But why we have to give only self? Because that is a naming rules. That is a naming rule which is given by Python community. Python people says that how to differentiate class method, static method, object level method. So how they recognize? By seeing the method, it is object level method. If the first argument is what? Self. If the first argument is a self, then immediately they'll understand that, okay, this method is what? Object level method. If you give some other name, they cannot able to recognize because all people are writing with the first argument as what? Self. If you are writing with some other name, then other people can able to understand, is it which method is? No. Because of that, Python says that, okay, you want to write object level method, you define the first argument as what? Self. Then only other people will recognize this method as what? Object level method. So it is only a naming convention. That's all. If you want, you can give any other name also. If you want, you can give any other name also. No problem. Okay. Yes. So object level methods bind with object. So you can write this method with arguments, or you can write this methods with arguments or without arguments. But what is the default argument it hold? Self. What is the default argument it hold? Self. Okay, right? The next one is, so this is object level method. Okay, yes. Yes, it is just like other argument, but if it is having first argument as a self, then only it is recognized by other people as which method? Object level method, right? So within the class, you can write one more type of object level method, which is a special. And that method you called it as which one? Constructor method. Constructor method are the same thing, you call it as which one? Constructor. You are saying it's a constructor method or what? Constructor. So constructor is a special method. Constructor is a special. Constructor is a special method. Constructor is a special method which is used to initialize, object or to define initial properties, of which one? Object. Constructor is a special method, and here constructor is a object level method. Constructor is which method? Object level method. So constructor method, or constructor is executed automatically. Constructor is executed automatically on creation of, constructor is executed automatically on creation of what here? Object. Constructor is executed automatically. Constructor is executed automatically on creation of what here? Object. So whenever you create object, your object is created by invoking what here? Constructor method. Okay, so this method get executed automatically. Okay, this method get executed automatically whenever you create object of the class. This method get executed automatically whenever you create object of a class. Okay, so what is the name of this method is? So there is a method called, yes. So underscore definition, this is a predefined. So definition underscore init underscore and the self. And you can write this with arguments, or you can write this without arguments. But the first argument should be what here? Self. Okay, statement 1, statement 2. Okay, statement 1, statement 2, like this. You can include number of statement. So your constructor, a block of code, block of code which has to be executed, on creation of object, is written inside which method? Constructor method. Written inside which method here? Constructor method. Any code which you want to execute it, the block of code which has to be executed on creation of object, any code which you want to execute, okay, on creation of object, that you are writing inside what? Constructor. Means it is used for object initialization. This method is used for what here? Object initialization. So object initialization is done using which method here? Constructor method. And what is the name of that method? Init. Okay, what is the name of that method here? Init. So which you can call it as which method? Constructor method, right? So it means the object is never created. The object is never created without invoking what? Constructor. The object is never created without invoking constructor. But we created all these objects. For example, we created robo object. But are you write any constructor in robo class? No. But you said robo, it followed by parenthesis. Now this parenthesis indicates what here? Constructor. You are creating object of a robo class by invoking what? Constructor. But are you write any constructor in robo class? No. But actually this robo class or every class in Python is inherited. Every class in Python inherits. Inherited means acquire the properties of one class. That class is called which one? Object class. So every class in Python is an object. Means it will automatically inherit. When you write a class, it inherit automatically all the methods, all the properties or all the methods of which class? Object class. So that object class is having which method? Init method. If you don't write init method in your class, it will call the init method of which class? Object class. If you don't write init method in your class, it will call the init method of which class? Object class. If you don't write in your class, then it will call the init method of which class? Object class. Okay, now, right. Yeah, just to see it. Other than that, you can write your own. Yes. For example, any object you take. But whenever you create the object, so whenever your object is created, now this is init method. So init is nothing but which method here? Constructor or constructor method. Constructor or constructor method. So I'll try to display the message inside init method. Inside init method, I'll try to display car object is what here? Created. Car object is created. But is it this init method with arguments or without? Without. Because self is a default argument. Self is what here? Default argument. Okay. You are not sending anything to what here? Self. You are not sending anything to the self. Self is a default argument. Okay. Yes. Then what I'm doing is I'm trying to create cars. Now car 1 equal to car. If I don't write here parenthesis, that gives what here? Error. So that gives an error. If I don't write parenthesis, Okay, so it gives an error. Okay, but actually, if you write car1 equal to car is what, class or object? Class. So this class is assigned to what here? Car1. So it means this class can be referred with what here? Car1. But object is created or not created? Not created. To create object, I have to call which one here? Constructor. So this parenthesis indicates what here? Constructor. So what will happen? What will happen is it will create, first it will create which object? Car object. This is a car1 whose address is what? 1000. On creation of object, it will call. On creation of object, it will call, right? On creation of object, it will call which method? On creation of object, it will call which method? Init method. So this indicates which method? Init method. And this init method hold, this init method hold the address of which object? Current object. What is the current object here? Car1. So which object is initialized here? Car1 object is initialized. Which object is initialized here? Car1 object is initialized. But are you write anything to initialize here? No. You displayed only message inside init method. Car object is created. Inside init method and car object is what? Created. If you run this, now you can see inside init method car object is what? Created. If I create another car by saying car2 equal to car, so inside init method and car object is created. If I'm saying car3 equal to car, what will happen? Inside init method and car object is created. So whenever you create the object, whenever you are creating the object, you are creating the object by invoking which one? Constructor. Are you invoking any constructor here? No. The constructor will be called automatically when you create the object of a class, because this parenthesis refers to what here? Constructor. Suppose my constructor is having arguments x comma y. So is it this is a constructor with arguments or without? With arguments. But I'm creating car object. Are you sending values? This is constructor or not? Yes. But you are calling the constructor with arguments or without arguments? Without arguments. But class is having a constructor with arguments or without? With arguments. But you are calling the constructor without arguments, then immediately it gives what here? Error. It's saying that, see here, car dot, whenever you create object, it is calling which method? Init. Car dot init missing two required positional arguments. One is a x and one more is what? Y. So is it missing x and y or not? Yes. So I must give the values, right? I must give the values to avoid this error. So 100 comma 200, 300 comma 400. Okay. 500 comma what is that? 600. Now once you run this, car object is created like that. So if you want to create object of any class, now you must know how many what constructor is there in that class. If you don't know what constructor is there in that class, you cannot able to create what? Object. You cannot able to create the object until unless you don't know what? Constructor, right? So this is a constructor without arguments. This is a constructor without argument. So the constructor defined inside a class, constructor defined inside class can be with, so can be with arguments, or it can be what? Without arguments. With arguments or without arguments. Now this is a constructor without arguments. And this is called, now this is invoking what? Constructor. And here also invokes a constructor. Invoking constructor. This is also invoking constructor on creation of object. On creation of object, it invokes a constructor. Inside init method like that. Okay. Inside init method, in car object is created. Inside init method, car object is created. Inside init method, car object is created. Okay, right? Yeah, this is how you are trying to call. Now you can write this constructor method with the, yeah, these are just to understand all the methods, but where it is used, we'll see that also. Okay. Along with the variables. Now this is a constructor with arguments. Okay. This is a constructor with the arguments. Now there is a class. We'll have one class here. Okay, we'll have one class called dog, right? So there is a constructor with arguments. So self, and there is also name. Okay, I'm saying name, comma, is, okay, dog is created. Or I can say dog is created with, okay, this particular name. So I'm trying to say definition mean, now dog one equal to dog of. So I cannot write like this because is it your constructor is with argument or without with argument? I have to give the name. I have to give the name of the argument. Some I just give the name as some puppy. So I try to create another dog. Okay, some dog name is some James, right? Now you can see this. Now once you run this, now you can see dog is created with puppy and dog is created with what here? James. Now this is with argument or without argument? With argument. Now, but if I'm saying dog 3, if I'm saying dog 3 equal to dog, then what will happen? It gives what? Error. Because init method inside a dog is with argument or without with argument. So I must give the value of this particular argument. If I don't give the value for this argument, then it gives what? Error. So you need to know how many constructors are there in the class, right? Which constructors are there in the class? Okay, is it constructor with arguments or is it a constructor without arguments? If there is a constructor without arguments, you have to create object by invoking without arguments. If it is a constructor with arguments, you have to invoke the constructor with arguments. But this gives what here? Error, because there is no constructor. There is no constructor without what? Arguments. There is no constructor without arguments. Now you can see with the names, but you can have, so method is nothing but function only. Method is nothing but what? Function. You can write a function with different types of arguments, right? In the same way, you can write a method with different types of arguments. Like you can write a method with default arguments. You can write a method with required arguments. You can write a method with what? Different types of argument, variable length arguments. Like that, you can write a method with different types of arguments. You can write a method with different types of arguments, default arguments, variable length arguments, okay, required arguments. Like that, you can write a method with different types of arguments. Okay, right. Yeah, we'll see more on this, like how to work with these constructors. I want to tell you object level variables, but tomorrow we'll see how to work with this object level variables. So today we'll stop it here and tomorrow we'll continue with object level variables, right? Yes, we'll stop it here today.